figure in post-colonial studies. Can you start by explaining his influence on the field since the 1990s?
Certainly, Bhabha's work revolutionized post-colonial theory with concepts like hybridity and ambivalence. These ideas challenged traditional views of fixed cultural identities, thereby reshaping our understanding of colonial and post-colonial relations.
It's fascinating how he redefined cultural interactions. But some critics argue that his style is inaccessible. How has this affected his reception?
Indeed, his dense prose has been criticized for elitism. However, the depth of his analysis provides a comprehensive framework for understanding complex cultural dynamics, which many scholars find invaluable despite the challenging language.
Looking ahead, how might Bhabha's theories continue to evolve in academic discourse?
I believe his concepts will remain crucial as we explore new forms of cultural interactions in a globalized world. His work invites ongoing reinterpretation and application across various contexts.
Moving on, Dr. Rathod, Bhabha's notion of hybridity is pivotal. Can you elaborate on how this concept redefines cultural identity?
Hybridity posits that cultural identity is formed in a third space, a fluid, dynamic zone where different cultural elements interact. It disrupts the idea of pure, unchanging identities by highlighting constant negotiation and transformation.
That sounds transformative, but are there risks in such fluid identities? Some might argue it leads to cultural dilution.
An understandable concern, but Bhabha suggests hybridity fosters creativity and innovation. While it challenges traditional boundaries, it also offers rich possibilities for cultural expression and resistance.
In what ways do you foresee hybridity influencing future cultural dialogues?
As global interconnectivity deepens, hybridity will likely become a key lens for understanding cultural adaptation and resilience, particularly in multicultural societies.
Let's delve into Bhabha's concept of mimicry. How does it reveal new forms of resistance within colonial discourse?
Bhabha describes mimicry as colonized subjects imitating colonizers but imperfectly. This not-quite-not-white mimicry generates ambivalence, subtly undermining colonial authority by exposing its inconsistencies and vulnerabilities.
However, doesn't mimicry risk reinforcing colonial power structures rather than subverting them?
That's a valid point, yet Bhabha argues that ambivalence creates a space for resistance. By highlighting the flaws in colonial logic, mimicry can destabilize and challenge dominant narratives.
How might this concept be applied to contemporary forms of cultural dominance?
In today's context, mimicry can be a tool for marginalized groups to challenge cultural hegemony, using irony and subversion to question perceived norms and power dynamics.
Finally, Dr. Rathod, Bhabha's work on nation and narration offers a fresh perspective on national identity. Can you explain this concept?
Bhabha views nations as narrative constructs formed through the interaction of diverse cultural groups. This undermines the notion of homogeneous national cultures, emphasizing their inherently hybrid and contested nature.
But doesn't this threaten national unity by focusing on divisions?
In an era of increasing globalization and migration, Bhabha's framework could inspire more nuanced approaches to nationalism, ones that celebrate diversity while promoting cohesion and mutual respect.
Today on the podcast, we delve into the profound contributions of Homi K. Bhabha to post-colonial theory. Dr. Rathod, how does Bhabha redefine our understanding of cultural identity?
Bhabha challenges the conventional notion of national identity as fixed and homogeneous. Instead, he introduces the concept of cultural hybridity, emphasizing identities formed in the third space, a metaphorical realm where cultures blend and transform.
That's intriguing. Cultural hybridity seems to suggest a dynamic interplay of influences. Could you share an example of this in a real-world context?
Certainly, consider the Indian diaspora in the UK. Their cultural identity is a fusion of British and Indian elements, creating unique traditions like British Indian cuisine. This hybridity defies the rigid boundaries of traditional national identities.
While hybridity offers inclusivity, some argue it erases distinct cultural identities. How does Bhabha address this counterargument?
Bhabha argues that hybridity doesn't erase but rather enriches cultures. It allows for a more comprehensive narrative accommodating multiple voices. This perspective is forward-looking, promoting unity in diversity.
Building on cultural hybridity, how does Bhabha's theory critique essentialist views of national identity? Dr. Rathod.
Bhabha critiques essentialism, which sees nations as having fixed traits. He posits that national identities are narratives, often masking the diversity within. This is evident in post-colonial nations where colonial histories disrupt claims to pure national cultures.
How does this view manifest in practical terms?
In Malaysia, for example, the national identity is a tapestry of Malay, Chinese, and Indian influences. The government's attempt to promote a singular cultural identity often overlooks this rich hybridity. Bhabha's theory reveals the potential for more inclusive policies.
Yet, some argue that such hybridity could dilute cultural heritage. What is Bhabha's stance on preserving cultural uniqueness?
Bhabha acknowledges this concern but suggests that hybridity celebrates rather than dilutes heritage. It fosters a forward-looking dialogue that embraces change as a vital part of cultural evolution.
Let's shift to Bhabha's concept of mimicry in colonial contexts. Dr. Rathod, how does mimicry function as both compliance and resistance?
Mimicry involves colonized subjects imitating the colonizers, often imperfectly. This creates a blurred copy that highlights the contradictions in colonial authority, subtly subverting it. It's a way of exerting agency within oppressive systems.
Can you illustrate this with an example?
In colonial India, English education aimed to create reformed subjects. However, Indian intellectuals used this education to critique colonial rule, blending Western and indigenous ideas to challenge British hegemony.
Critics might argue that mimicry reinforces colonial hierarchies. How does Bhabha reconcile this tension?
Bhabha suggests that mimicry's ambivalence destabilizes colonial narratives. By exposing their instability, mimicry offers a forward-looking path for post-colonial societies to redefine their identities. Individuals can embrace cultural hybridity by being open to diverse perspectives and engaging in meaningful dialogue. This personal commitment can catalyze broader societal change, fostering communities that thrive on diversity and collaboration.